Hello everybody and welcome to this NQA hosted webinar in conjunction with AvISO. So my name is Simon Newell. I'm the sales manager here at NQA. I've been at NQA for a little over 3 years, worked for 5.5 years in the TIC industry now. My role here is to manage a team of business development advisors and managers in the UK. And deal with sort of tenders and incoming leads and inquiries for larger clients. So if we can go to the first slide, please, Paul. Okay, so what I'm going to do initially is be going through a number of slides explaining who NQA are and what we do, which some of you may already be familiar with, but for those of you who are not, hopefully this will be a little bit of helpful information for you to take away. I won't drone on and go into sort of a lot of detail and information, but just a quick overview of what we are and what we do. And after that, I will be introducing Paul Stevens, who's the Director of AvISO, and we'll be talking to you today about how to keep your management system simple, effective, efficient, without kind of overcomplicating things or creating a mountain of paperwork. So this first slide is a bit of an introduction into NQA and our presence. We're an international certification body with a wide presence globally with central locations in China, India, UK, London, and USA in Boston. We are the #1 certification body in the United States in terms of aerospace. So we have some really big clients over there that we've worked with for a number of years. We've got a really good reputation in the US in terms of aerospace. We are growing that quite rapidly in the UK as well. In the UK, it tends to be more kind of the bread and butter standards, so ISO 9001, 14001, and 45001, that sort of on an annual basis, they kind of tick along with existing clients and new clients coming forward. 27001 has taken a bit of a spike in the last 12 to 18 months, despite our wonderful COVID antics that have been going on in the background. Which has been really interesting and good for us as an organization, but good for businesses moving forward and how their understanding of 27001, they can implement that into their business. And in terms of the UK market, we see a lot of growth in a number of different standards, not only these ones that we're talking about today, but it seems to be a lot of new ones coming through, or old ones that people are starting to adopt now and getting a bit more interest in. In terms of China, over there we're the #1 certification body in the automotive sector. So we've got a number of large organizations that we work with. We have a huge number of clients over in China. We're very popular there, which has been a lot of hard work and taken a long time. So yeah, on to the next slide, please, Paul, if you may. Okay, so in terms of certification and training, we offer a variety of standards. This seems to be growing, like I say, at the moment on a monthly basis. There are a lot of new standards that people are getting more interested in holding within their organizations. So sort of energy standards, risk management, business continuity, PAS 2060, which is a verification standard, which has come through, and that's an interesting one to look at if you get a spare 5 minutes. All of this information is obviously available on our website to freely browse, and there's a lot of information you can download and review if you wanted to take that as well. All the areas you see on the screen we specialize in for certification and offer a number of training courses. So most of these, if not all, we do an element of training. So that might be e-learning, and it might well be a bit more in-depth training, so lead auditor or internal auditor training. If you go to the next slide for me, please, Paul, this gives a bit more indication of the kind of training courses that we run and offer. So we have our own courses that we've developed and we run, as well as CQI IRCA courses, which is an internationally recognized training course. So you can take that with you into whatever organization that you're working within as an internationally recognized certificate, which obviously comes with its difficulties. You have to do an exam at the end of it, but it is very much worthwhile. I've got a number of them, and they're really good courses, and they're very robust way of learning and training. And final slide, please, Paul, from me. So today you're going to be hearing from Paul. As mentioned, he'll be talking about the how to keep your management system simple, effective, and efficient without overcomplicating things or creating a mountain of paperwork. I'll let Paul introduce himself. He knows himself better than I do. I know him well, but not well enough to introduce him in detail. And talk around his experiences. So today will be around 35 to 45-minute webinar. Any questions that you have, please leave them in the chat box. We'll try and get to them maybe through the presentation, but probably at the end, and there'll be ample opportunity at the end to ask any questions you might have, and we'll try and answer those. If we don't get to them, then we'll try and get those answers to you to make sure that we cover all bases for you. Obviously, this is a recorded webinar, so you'll be able to review it at a later date if wished, and you can pass it around to various different individuals in your organisation if you get some real value from it and like to listen to it again. For now, I'll stop talking and pass you over to Paul. Thank you for your time, everybody, and I look forward to listening to what you have to say, Paul.
Okay, good afternoon, Simon. Thank you very much for the introduction. I hope everyone can hear me all right. I'm getting used to the software and actually talking to a screen by myself and realising there's hundreds of people listening. So yes, my name's Paul Stevens. I'm the Director at AvISO Consultancy. I want to talk a little bit today about what we're going to look at. Actually, I thought just to point out what we're not going to look at after a rather embarrassing LinkedIn post that went out last week. So if anyone's got the wrong end of the stick, today is not about advice on how to keep your man. In fact, what I'm really going to talk about is some of my thoughts and opinions on management systems gained over the years I've worked with these standards, and the focus today really being on about how we can look to keep management systems simple, how we can get the most value from them, and how we can reduce some of the potential problems. And simple really is not about, it's not easy. In fact, it's very hard work to make these systems simple. And simple is not about cutting corners by any stretch. So today is very much my opinion, and hopefully the opinion of the team at AvISO. I don't expect everyone to agree, and I really hope at the end of this we can have this will start some interesting conversation and questions. So I look forward to that at the end of the talk, if that's all right. But really, if nothing else, if you take away from today that there's no set right way of applying a management system, it's finding the right way for each business. Okay, so AvISO, we are based in the south of England. We have offices in London, Birmingham, and Ireland. We also have members of the team in Portugal. And as a company, we offer training, consultancy, and software solutions for managing risk, compliance, and governance. So we work predominantly with ISO, but also other industry-specific standards like FIAS, TISAX, and SOC 2. And I'm really pleased to have a fantastic team of consultants who all are much more competent and skilled than I am in their particular fields. But it's their feedback, everything that we learn as a team that's feeding back into what I'd like to talk about today. Our client base, well, across our client base, to give you an idea of size, we get audited 5 to 10 times a week by third-party certification bodies, and what we learn, the data we learn from that, the experience we get, we feed back in to ensure that we continually improve and develop the way we work and the service that we offer for our clients. As a business, we hold ISO 9001, Cyber Essentials, and are going for 27001 this year. So we're putting our money where our mouth is, and we expect to be able to show that to our clients. I'm going to talk a little bit about our clients. Sorry, just getting to grips with the software. So we're really lucky, and we have a fantastic selection of clients. Our clients are in the chemical sector, so professional services, fintech, law firms, manufacturing. We work a lot in the automotive sector. We have some high-end precision manufacturing, sort of spin-off race teams. We even have a client who crash tests Formula 1 cars, which is quite an interesting site visit when we go and see them. We work in construction, environmental firms, and the list keeps growing. But that's not to say we're necessarily experts in every single one of those fields, although we do have a lot of experience in most. What we are is specialists in management systems and about getting the right information from our clients and presenting that in the best way for their business to build a management system that works for them. And with our clients, we have some that hold single certification to one standard. We have some that hold 7 or 8 certificates in integrated systems. We have some that have no physical offices at all. And we have others with 15 or 20 global offices. So complete mix of clients. But what's really interesting is the problems we see these clients face tend to be quite similar, if only on different scales. So the next slide, some of the standards we work with. When I started the company, I focused on 9001, 14001. We now support clients with around 35 ISO and industry-specific standards. And that growth has been really organic, based around client requirements. We deliver one standard, we do a good job, they ask us to come help with another one. And for some of those standards, that's mean bringing in new members of the team. For others, we do partner occasionally with some technical experts to make sure we've got the expertise we need, we can do the right job for the clients. And others, that means sitting down, reading the standard, going on courses. In fact, we've got one of our team on an NQA lead auditor course as we speak. So to increase the internal skill set, the in-house skill set. So today, I want to talk about standards and how we can look at simplification and how we can look to get more from them. But I thought rather than just working through things on a clause by clause basis, which I'm sure many of you have sat through before, I'd try something different. I'll look at it from a different angle. I hope this works, and I'm sure you'll let me know at the end. So, and the other thing is to say, forgive me if I jump around a bit today, partly nerves, sitting in a room by myself, talking to a screen, but more so that ISO standards, they are interrelated systems. So however we try to unpack them and then categorize a presentation like this, we can't do it in a perfect set of steps. So I will jump around a little bit, and apologies for that. So the areas I want to look at are focus and honesty. So focusing, making sure your system's focusing on what's key to your organization, and being really honest about the information you put into it. A duplication and centralisation of a management system. So really about using your management system as a signpost to all the great things you're doing across your organisation. Too often we see management systems that don't reference some of the great work that companies are doing that has relevance to that particular standard. Talk about complexity and language, touching on the use of sorts of generic templates and some of the issues we see when they come into play. And about language, using language you're comfortable with, not speaking ISO speak. So then a bit about making the most of what's available. There's lots of tools out there, free and chargeable, but lots of free stuff out there that can really help you get the most out of your management system, that can take away some of the more onerous tasks, remove some of the risks, and help you focus on what's really important. And then look at non-conformities. I want to talk a little bit about what we do with the data we get on non-conformities and how we use that. And actually, there's some more resources there for you. And then a little bit about beyond initial certification. But really, today, how can we simplify things a bit? How can we get more from the standards rather than just a certificate on the wall? How can we help audits run more smoothly? So when the cert audits come in, it's a really positive experience, and add value. And if we can get that, I think that's going to be really important. So focus and honesty. What do I mean by that? Well, focus. And watch out for scope creep. If we take ISO 9001 as an example, ISO 9001 is a quality management system. It focuses on quality in the areas of your business which can affect quality. It's not a full business management system, and there's no need to try and proceduralize and document every single step of everything you do. It's for you to think about the risks posed, in this instance, to quality, and apply the appropriate resources. So for all the best reasons, we see systems becoming overly complicated because people are nervous and not sure how to comply with the clause. So in fact, they throw everything at it, throw the kitchen sink at it, belts and braces, which is great, you're compliant, but the system very quickly becomes very onerous, resource and time heavy, overly documented. So when you set out, think about what it is you're doing, what you want to do, and that brings me on to the motivations. why are you applying a standard? So if we stick with 9001 now as an example, is it to help you align processes? Is it to ensure best practice? Is it to improve product quality? What are those areas? And determine those at the beginning of the project, and then make sure you identify them as more significant risks or more significant opportunities as you write the system, and then set your objectives around those areas. Areas where there is very limited risk, maybe document the risk register. Here's a risk, here's the controls. The risk is managed, we can move on and focus elsewhere. So make sure you write the system around your motivations and don't let it become a beast. And to add to that, it's up to you as an individual business to determine what the risks are. It's not for a consultant to come in and tell you where the high risks are, and it's not for an auditor. As long as you can show to everyone you've thought about the risks, you've followed a process for identifying and categorising them, and then you're addressing the most significant and how you do it, that is compliant. You don't need to tackle everything, especially not on day one. And then ensure that processes and procedures are correct. And this is where sometimes templates can cause more of a problem than they add value. There's lots of great templates available all over the internet, pages of very complicated looking text, but very rarely do they actually have any real direct relevance to the business that uses them, unless you spend a lot of time rewriting them and tailoring them. And when you try and make your business fit one of these templates, it's never going to work smoothly, and it's always going to be a challenge, which means audits and continued compliance is always going to be hard work. So when you think about the procedures, write them so they're truly reflective of not even where you want to be, but where you are at that moment in time. And if you know there's problems, if there's opportunities to improve them, document those within your risks and opportunities. Set your objectives to address them, but be honest, because that will, you can show progress, and you can actually, at the time of audit, you'll be able to evidence things. If you've got a procedure which is of no real relevance or is not relevant to the actual way you work, you're always going to struggle during an audit. So again, just working through some bits of it, risks and opportunities. Most people in a business are very aware of the risks and opportunities. They just don't call them that. They don't use that phrase. It's what keeps you in the office at 7 o'clock on a Friday night. What has what you wake up worrying about? Why your clients are unhappy? It's that information that we're really looking to get onto paper and to define so that we can address it in a controlled way. So don't document what you think an auditor wants to see or what you think is going to avoid perhaps highlighting some issues you don't want everyone to know, because not everyone needs to see it, but it's important that you write what is relevant. And if your management system, if your procedures are honest, your risks are set, compliance and certification basically becomes secondary. That's what you're doing day to day, and what your management system state are the same thing. So it becomes much easier to manage the system and evidence progress and continued improvement. And I think that evidence and continued improvement gets overlooked. So without wanting to labour the point, sorry, but set objectives you want to meet. So often we see companies with nondescript objectives that are written really just to comply with the standard. But you're going to get much more value if the objectives you set are a true reflection of what you want to do in the company. And I know within my company there's things we want to achieve, there's things we want to do, and our management system shows that. It shows progress against that. And because the whole team is working so hard on these things, we are achieving against most of them, not all the time, but we can show progress, we can show development, and that's, you're going to get a lot more from that. If your objectives aren't relevant, you're going to pick them up, dust them off just before an audit, and try and find progress, or try and evidence progress, sorry. So I put here focus on honesty again, sharing the positive and the negative. We meet some clients who will let everyone know they've gained certification, but they don't really talk to anyone within the business about some of the challenges they've faced throughout the process. We have others who will share non-conformities and sort of when they come up, but don't really share the good news. I think it's really important to involve as many people as you can. Tell them about the problems you're facing, tell them the good stuff as well. It's the people that are doing the job day to day, that are following those processes, like to have some fantastic ideas and be able to provide their opinions on ways to improve them and overcome things. So by sharing that information, by valuing people's opinion, you're going to get increased buy-in, more engagement. When the auditors speak to those people, they're going to be much more positive as well. So really provide a true representation of the organisation. If the management system's not doing that, it's worth going away and having a look and think about how you can make it more relevant to the business. So duplication and centralisation, what do I mean by that? So for any company out there that holds certification to 2 or more standards, we really strongly advise you integrate this. And I think a lot of people do, but there's still some out there that aren't. And particularly with things like Annex SL, so the ISO standards are more closely aligned. But even when we're looking at standards like SOC 2 and TISAX, so TISAX being an automotive information security standard, SOC 2 being an American information security standard, when you look closely, they're really closely aligned with 27001. So what we're able to do is integrate those requirements and again save companies an awful lot of time. So integration, it doesn't just help you reduce the number of documents and reduce workload. The big thing is it removes contradiction. And one of the problems we see with companies with multiple systems is that the core elements are written differently and managed differently, and an auditor then is well within their rights correctly to say, well, if you're doing the internal audit process or the management review process 3 different ways, is one not better than the other? Is there not value in sort of looking to combine these and get best practice? So, and also an integrated system, NQA might not like to say this, but you can, I think there's opportunities for discounts in auditing. If you can present to certification body NQA that you're a fully integrated system, there's an opportunity to reduce the number of audit days. So don't keep several copies of the system in different locations. I mean, if we can, I think if you can avoid having hard copies of the system full stop, fantastic. But when we see companies with multiple hard copy documents, either across departments or locations, it's virtually impossible to keep on top of it. And as we're seeing a bit, document control is the most common non-conformity that comes up. So I think with the tools available today, software, cloud-based, it's so much easier to keep the system in one location and let everybody access that one system rather than having lots of versions spread out across a business. So that is a definite opportunity if it's not something you're doing already. And centralising is just far less time consuming, it's far less labour intensive, and it's much, much quicker to roll out updates. So use your management system as a signpost out across the organisation. What do we mean? Well, we see quite often management systems where they try and keep everything, or companies will try and keep everything under the umbrella of the management system. And it becomes very, very complicated, paper heavy, but also it means that everything sits on one person's shoulder or one department's shoulder. It's not my responsibility, it's the quality manager that deals with that. It's not my responsibility, it's over there. So the management system, in my opinion, should really act as a framework, and it should tell a story, and then it should signpost out. So forgive me, but if we think about interested parties, so what a lot of people refer to as stakeholders, we think about who they are, what they want from your business, what they require, how we communicate with them, and the next step is to think about what risks and opportunities they pose. Are there compliance risks? Are there opportunities to improve the quality of a product, quality of a service, to stand out from competitors? And the next step is to think about what controls you already have in the business to mitigate those risks, maximise those opportunities. So that can be training programs, it can be software, it can be 1,000 different things, and then my mind goes blank. But I'm sure we're all aware of all the different tools you use day to day. It could be marketing, it could be development departments. They are the controls. So the next step then is to think about, well, who's responsible for those controls? And then we signpost out to the records that evidence them. So if we're talking about training and the training matrices or training records, they might sit with HR, and then we signpost from the management system to the HR department. The controls live with HR. And that not only helps us simplify the system, because we only get as far as signposting out, but it helps involve others and stops everything resting on one person's shoulders. So with that same point really is defining roles and responsibilities. If people understand that part of their role has a direct impact on your management system and they can see the part they play, it's much easier for them to understand why they need to be involved and to engage. And that way, by doing this, we can share responsibility and workload across an organisation, and that really helps create a shared accountability, a shared engagement, and that increases buy-in. So involving more people by signposting out to the jobs they do and showing how valuable the job they do is to the clients can add real value. And finally, coordinating audits and management reviews. This is really back to integration. We don't need to complete a full set of audits for every location or department, and we can combine audits across multiple standards. So really what's important is that we consider risk and then we design an audit plan that is appropriate, not necessarily bound by physical constraints, departmental constraints or standard constraints. And it's the same with the management review and some other core ISO requirements. So by coordinating the consistent elements of different standards, it can really help us save time and remove duplication. Complexity in language. We don't need to write standards, well, we don't need to write our management system using the language of a standard. For anyone that's ever sat and read an ISO document, they're not the most easygoing. And there's no need for your management system to be written in the same way. Use language that you and people within the company are going to be comfortable with. They're going to understand. So something to help with this can be something like a glossary at the beginning of the standard, where we take some of the ISO terms and we cross-reference the terms that you're more comfortable with in the business. And beyond that, we never use ISO language. I think something else to consider along there is consider a central document cross-referencing the clause against how you address them. Just one document. It's really useful for an auditor and for yourself to give you confidence that you're compliant. But you have the document, this clause, this is how we do it. Beyond that, we don't need to speak about clauses. We don't need to speak in the language of the standard. So at AvISO, we very much advocate applying a process approach to management systems. And this means writing the system around the way work flows through a business and applying the relevant clauses at the relevant steps along the business, rather than taking the clauses and trying to apply what the business does at that point, because then you get the system that's written in the structure of the standards. It has no real reflection of the business, and it's compliant, but it's very, very hard to follow. So wherever we can, once we've gone beyond some sort of cross-referencing document, we will avoid using ISO language and focusing directly on the clauses. So diagrams. Some of you will, I'm sure, notice there's a few typos in this presentation. There's bound to be. So I'm quite dyslexic. I'm also terrible at typing. So for me, the last thing I really want to see is pages and pages of documented procedures, unless it's absolutely necessary. Diagrams are a fantastic way of communicating information effectively and efficiently. And by this, I don't mean cut and pasting the old Deming cycle of plan, do, check, act and sticking it in the manual. I mean using schematics, flowcharts, infographics, and even video to communicate procedures. The standard says you must document relevant procedures. They must be documented. It doesn't say they must be written. So there are lots and lots of opportunities for communicating and documenting information beyond written text. And I think that can add real value to a system and really help people engage with it quickly and understand what you're trying to achieve. Along that line, use images. We very much encourage the use of photos when we're completing audits. So rather than trying to explain that we've seen an gas certificate or an energy bill or some other compliance document, we take a photo of it, we put it in the report. And that's quicker, less likely to make a mistake, and it adds value to the client because they can see the correlation between the documents that they're holding and the compliance requirements that they have to meet. So that can definitely add value. Under this as well, do the hard work from the start. So back to this honesty and focus. If you get the management system right from the off, it's going to be much easier to maintain, improve and build on. And unfortunately, when we speak to new clients at the beginning of this process, very often their focus and their budget is on passing that initial certification and getting the certificate on the wall. And rightly so, that's what they've been tasked to do. But people forget that actually you're going to be audited year on year, and if the system isn't right written right from the off. If it doesn't really fit your business, you're going to be trying to get a square peg into a round hole year after year, and it's never really going to add the value it could. So sorry, all these slides aren't like this, so just bear with me for a bit. Involve everyone, but only share what's relevant. Very often when we talk to clients, we ask them about how they communicate their management system, and they'll tell us, oh, at the induction, we give people the whole system, we ask them to read it, they sign for it, done. And I don't necessarily think that's always the best way of getting that information shared. If someone is on the shop floor, they're involved in only one particular process area, they don't need to know the whole ins and outs of the system. To present them with a full management system can be overwhelming. What they need to know is the procedure relevant to their role. They need to know the risks and opportunities that their role can influence and have an effect on. Same with the objectives and the policy. So communicate what's relevant, but not everything. And that really helps avoid overwhelming people. And most people are really proud of the work they do within a business and happy to talk about it. However, they're not so comfortable when we start challenging and questioning about things which aren't relevant. Again, this links back to roles and responsibilities. If that's really clearly outlined, you've only got to ask people to be responsible for what you've defined. So it does, again, this is just jumping around, apologies. Don't try and proceduralise everything. There's no requirement to have a procedure for how to put the lights on, how to make a cup of tea. Think about what are the key steps within the business. What steps must be done to meet a desired outcome and mitigate identified risk? So when we over-proceduralise, we can stifle individuality, and that stops development and progress. What we need to do is think about what the absolute key steps are done that must be done, and then focus on those. And again, this is back to videos, diagrams. We don't have to just use text. And that's also not to say that we can't have guidance documents and supporting documents behind the high-level procedures. But when we see companies that try and proceduralise every step, it becomes very complicated. And a procedure, I think personally it's almost impossible to write a procedure for a job that's going to be appropriate to a job of, a very detailed procedure. The procedure has to be different if it's a £500 job or a £5 million job. So we need to get these things at the right level, signpost out. And if the management system is written right, is not overly proceduralised, if it's just capturing the essential information, the information that's going to add value, it's much easier to keep it up to date, to be proactive when you see opportunities to change. So an overly complex system, it's hard to change and it's less effective. Beyond that, so you mustn't be afraid to raise issues against the procedure if it's wrong. When we're carrying out audits, we've got just as much of an eye on is the procedure being followed. Is the procedure actually right? Would it not be better to update the procedure rather than raising non-conformity if someone's not following it? So it's important that we're considering that and we're continually improving the system. But finally, with the management system, consider influencing risk. It shouldn't put you out of business. If you're finding that the steps you've defined within your management system that are unachievable, that are causing nothing but pinch points and pain, and you're struggling with the non-conformities, reevaluate them. If you can't do your job because of your management system, something's wrong, and then there will be a better way of ensuring you're compliant, getting value. So if you're feeling that at any point in the system, yes, there are. I think that's when to focus on looking to change. So availability. When I started, I'm showing my age a little bit, most of the management systems we saw were lever arch files, kept on the shelf, dusted off. We've seen a move over to servers, and now, which I think is great, is the use of the cloud and that. But the traditional approach really open to human error. It can be really hard to find files, almost impossible to control them. Files get overwritten. I'm sure I can look at it. Experienced all of this, and it's really hard to share and collaborate. So some of the things which are available to you in your business now, SharePoint, Teams, Google Drive, Dropbox, they have a number of controls in them which a lot of people aren't aware of. Teams and SharePoint have automated version control. You can have separate view and edit permissions. So something we've used really successfully during lockdown is we've been inviting third-party auditors into our client system on a read-only basis for the duration of the audit. And that's worked really, really well. We can have multiple authors, multiple permissions, approval processes, workflows and alerts. We can even automate some reporting functions, advanced content search and retention policies to ensure you're legally compliant in some areas. And this can all be done with software that's already in the business. So by making the most of what you've already got, you can remove some of the biggest hurdles, some of the biggest challenges, biggest opportunities for getting non-conformities. So think about what's available for you in the business. Other things, like something we chose to do early this year, after quite a lot of doing and froing, was to make all of our legal registers publicly available. So if you go to our website, you can see full quality, environmental, food safety, 27 legal registers. This is the vast majority of the legislation we would use with our clients. We keep it up to date. One of our team was a solicitor before she joined AvISO. You can sign up and we'll send you a quarterly newsletter on any of updates and amends. We decided to make this a free resource because nobody else was doing it. It was something that was clearly needed within the market. So I use this as an example because it's us, but there's lots of resources out there for free that can be a real help. So this availability, think about software, think about the tools that are out there. All the links for all this will be shared after this, and if anyone's got any specific questions, happy to answer them. This next slide, on to lessons learned. This is another, before I go into detail about the slide itself, another great free resource. So AvISO and another consultancy called Ascent, we've worked together on an open data, open source project to share normalized data about all the non-conformities raised by certification bodies against our clients. And we make this publicly available. Again, the link will be shared after this. And this data allows us to categorize by standard, by clause, and see patterns. And this is something that we've always, AvISO always recorded this data from day one. Any opportunity for improvement, observation, non-conformity raised against any of our clients gets logged in a central database. And the value in this for us is that we start seeing patterns. So I can filter that data and I can look at a fintech company on stage 1 for 27,001. I can look at just general non-conformities. I can look at non-conformities by certification body and understand patterns and differences in approach. And then we can really help tailor our service and the way we approach a project specifically down to in a lot more detail, focusing on where we know the core issues are. So for us, the data on non-conformities is invaluable. A case in point being recently, we started seeing a few OFIs, a couple of minor non-conformities about communication. And after a bit of digging and a few questions, because we're looking at this data, we can see that it's new. It transpires one of the cert bodies has had a concern raised by UCAS about the way they audit against communication. So what that transpires down to is that more focus from auditors in that area. So although standards don't change, the approach by auditors and certification bodies can, and we want to keep track of that. So with that knowledge, we can then look at the way we address communication in the systems that we help our clients write. We've gone away, we thought about it, we've updated it, improved it, if I'm honest. And what that's now allowed us to do is design out that risk for all of our clients rather than just the few that have been audited. So very quickly, as the auditors start going in, they will see this new updated approach to managing communication. We've removed that risk for everybody. If I dive into this in a bit more detail, so the next slide here, this is, and again, you can do this from the site, looking at just non-conformities around ISO 9001 and 14001, and we can now start seeing 9001 is obviously a larger standard, so more non-conformities. But if I go to this here, the biggest non-conformity we see is documented information, then risks and opportunities, then objectives and processes, and they're the areas I've tried to focus on today. So if you can work on those areas, that's the biggest opportunity to reduce the number of non-conformities you're likely to get through an audit. So the points today are yes, not my opinion, but very much built around where we see patterns. So hopefully that's useful. And finally, system maturity. I think things to take away. If it's not working, change it. If a procedure or control is stopping you work effectively, then look to change it. As long as the procedure you document mitigates risks and is legally compliant, then it's compliant to the standard. So be honest, not working, change it. Identify pinch points. Look for areas where perhaps you're finding a bit of frustration, where things aren't going, and put the focus of the system onto that. Raise a risk around it, set an objective. Design out issues, particularly 27001. This is technical people go into this in much more detail. There's lots and lots of opportunities to design in controls, design out issues, which removes the need for lots of procedures, lots of detail. It's if it's designed out, it can't happen. We don't need the complex management system around it. Designing automation, and that really is back to the software. But finally, I think if there's nothing else, keep developing, keep testing, and keep challenging your system. You're going to get much more from it if you keep pushing it in. And actually, when you're audited by top 2 by certification body, they're going to be really impressed if they can see you've tried 3, 4, 5 new things. Okay, not all of them have worked, but some of them have. Some of them have driven the system forward. Then that's something they're going to see. They're going to see that you're taking it seriously, and that goes a long way in audit. So hopefully, I will leave it there. Open this up to some questions. I hope that's a bit of interest. And yeah, I'm not necessarily sure how the software works, so someone might have to jump in and down here. Okay, so just looking at actually one question. How do you gain a business owner's commitment when their human management system is just for marketing purposes? Tricky, and we come across that quite a lot. And I think it's talking about some of the points we've discussed today, showing them that actually they can get real value from it if they're honest, if they put some time in, and if the system's right, it's going to return value. It doesn't happen overnight. We don't go in and try and change everything in one go. We look for small wins, small opportunities to build confidence, to show the value, and then we go for the bigger and bigger wins and challenges. Okay, so Aaron, what's a good way to reduce procedures and change the needs of having so many? Looking at what's actually guidance. What's risk? What are the areas where there is a real risk and something that really has to be controlled? And what is it that is a way you'd like things to be done or need to be done on particular jobs and roles? So looking at the procedures and breaking them down, I would suggest into what must absolutely have to keep it done every time, and what is nice to do or relevant to certain jobs, and moving some of those to guidance documents. I'm going through this a bit quick. If anyone, by the way, would like to have a conversation in more detail after this, I'm more than happy to arrange individual calls to go through this, but I'll try and answer as much as I can. So another really interesting question: do you find it common for leadership to lose interest once the standard is achieved? Sometimes, you know what, yes. One of the things, actually, the software has really helped reduce this. We will work with the company, lots of enthusiasm around, get a certification in place, certification is awarded, fantastic. Right, next steps are, and everything goes quiet, and then we don't hear anything from them until about a month before the next audit, and we haven't looked at it yet, can we come in? And I think that's more when a system is particularly on a server or hidden away, it gets forgotten about. We move on to the next project. But if we've written it right, and actually if it's really accessible, so it's using software, using cloud-based, people are little and often dipping into it. It makes it so much easier to maintain that buy-in. Well, the questions are flying, so I'm doing my best here to keep up. So keeping a system is simple, real challenge, particularly in a very large organisation. It is, as I said at the beginning, simple is not easy. There's no way around that. So I'm not saying here and now I can give all the answers. But I think it is at centralising it, so people are all accessing the same documentation, looking at, again, what you're trying to achieve, using software. Software for us, we've just completed a 27001 project for a large global government contractor with several locations here in Australia and elsewhere. And we've had to look at what are corporate policies, what are guidance documents, and categorise the different documents within the business so that we're not putting the same emphasis onto every level of documentation in every records. But yes, Ian, I think that's a good question. Probably not something I can answer perfectly now, but there are definitely ways you can do that. But it's, I think, yeah, breaking the system down a bit. Sorry. So question here I can see about, is there a specific ISO standard to guide us to implement integrated 45, 14 and 9? So I'm not sure if that's that you've already done those, or if you get in touch after this, I can send you a document we've done where we've gone through and cross-referenced everything, so you can see the common clauses, the links, and we've got that for about 10 standards. So I'll be happy to share that. So I don't think there's no PAS. There was a PAS about integrating standards, but I don't think so much now. Suggestions for you reducing the size of a 45,001 risk register. I think filters can be the best way of just the risks that you've shown are controlled and managed, filter out. It's usually useful to keep them there because, as you're aware, an auditor is going to want to check you've actually considered them. I have to have a look. Sorry, that's not a great answer, I realise, but happy to have a look at the system and offer some thoughts again. A lot of these questions, it'd be great to go in and look at individually. Thank you for someone who says it's really informative. Really good to hear, because it's quite nervous sitting here talking to a screen. Do all clauses need to be internally audited? Yes, but how regularly? Your cycle of the certification lasts 3 years. If there's a very, very low risk area and you can show it's low risk, you don't necessarily have to audit it every year. You can also combine it, or you can do a lighter touch audit on that, where you go into much more depth, much more detail on the higher risk areas. So there is a need to audit them at some point, but the depth you go into, I think, can really help. Question about how do we deal with auditors in different countries? We have lots of clients across multiple countries. Yes, I think there is, and we know there is, difference in approach and interpretation, not just across countries, in the UK by individuals, by certification bodies as well. And that's why one of the reasons we manage non-conformities and we track them so closely is to look for those patterns and address them. We try and build a positive relationship with the auditors if there's something they particularly want, but we also, at the same time, don't want to tailor our system to meet an auditor requirements rather than standard requirements. So it's a challenge. It's an ongoing challenge, and we continue to try and address it. But yes, I think being very clear, I mentioned about having a document that cross-references what we do with the clauses of the standard. They're no longer within the system talking about clauses. That can be a really useful document, particularly when auditors are more focused on just going through clause by clause. If you can say, here's a list of clauses, here's how we comply, off you go. That can be a real, it can be a real help for some. Others don't really want to look at it at all, and they just want to see the system and they understand that you're really following that process approach. So I think trying to cover as many eventualities as possible. Can I get the presentation? Yeah, I believe that's going to be sent around to everybody after this, along with contact details and everything else. So someone who's written they're interested in understanding more about the software. Gareth, yeah, I can send over some links to it. I can send over some information on what we do, how we've used software to really streamline the implementation of systems, to reduce a significant proportion of the more administrative challenging tasks, and make sure that you can focus on just uploading it and entering the information that's relevant and adding value to you without worrying about the bits behind the scenes. So I can send you some links to set you up with a demo of the site if you'd like. Please feel free to get in touch afterwards. I will ask NQA for some details, your details, if that's all right. Next question, Paul. In your opinion, what is the best management system software package currently available? I'm going to say ours, if I'm honest, but that's unsurprising. There are a lot coming to the market at the moment, and they vary dramatically in cost and what they offer. I would have a look and ask to see them and see what it is you want to get from the system. Some of them, and the majority I would say, offer some components of a management system, so they would work to support your existing system. Others, like ours, are more about providing you with a framework to build the system on and built around all the requirements. So probably I'm a bit biased to answer that question, honestly, but happy to arrange and talk to you a bit more about it. Gareth, that's great. Thank you. Without documentation software, can you make simple to simplify commit? Yes, definitely. Really can. I think, you know, go through it, work out what's really relevant, work out what's worked, break it down so it's not just one big document. Look at your procedures. Are they very long, wordy? Could they be easily moved into flow charts, schematics? Could you do some talking heads videos about the things? How are you managing document and version control? Could you change that? The standard doesn't say you must have a version number or anything. It says documents must be controlled, e.g. version number, date or title. So I think there's a lot of overemphasis we've seen across the industry with version numbers. There are different ways of doing things. So yeah, definitely. And again, all these questions, I'd love to have a chat with people individually. I realise I'm flying through them, I'm very conscious of time. Be more than happy to have a look at and offer some thoughts. We do workshops for clients free, just have a look at the system to give them some ideas. But for us, it's really important that the people we work with, we give them as much information as we can, completely transparent, and then people can make informed decisions. So, but yes. Brilliant, yeah, Gareth, again, happy to share some software. Thank you for all the nice comments, that's very nice to hear. So I'll just run through these questions. Is there a particular ISO standard for streamlining documentation? That's a really good question. I don't believe there is, but there's lots of information in things like SharePoint on how you can do that, naming conventions, formatting. So get in touch. I will speak to our 27001 specialist, and I think we could definitely have some more information on that. So really, yeah, definitely. That's a really good question, and I'll be really keen to follow that up actually after this call, because there is lots of information out there, if not in ISO standards, probably more freely available. People like Microsoft and the like. So I don't know the answer, but I know one of the team. I know exactly remember the team that would. Lisa, the legal register, my email address will be shared at the end of this, but if you go to AvISO Consultancy, the legal registers are all there. Like I say, you don't have to, they're free of charge, freely accessible, so please feel free. If you'd like to sign up, there's a contact us thing on the website. We'll then send you the quarterly updates as well, and again, at no charge, no commitment. So if documentation is controlled and are presented in each department, then define duplication. I think I need to see an example of what you mean by that. I don't quite follow, but case by case. So sorry, that's not a good answer for me, but if we could have a look, I would be more than happy. So if it is, if documentation is controlled individually in each department and it's not duplicated, then that wouldn't be duplication, I guess, at all. What we don't want to see is management systems that repeat information that's managed elsewhere. We want to see it signposted out. So that's what I'm getting at. Brilliant. I think that's all the questions. So thank you everyone who's taken the time to listen. I hope it's been informative, and yeah, I hope you all have a fantastic weekend. I'll say goodbye for now, and Natalie or Simon, I'll pass back to you if I may.